Disclaimer: the following is a parody of Urinating Trees, A Hater's Guide to series. If you are unfamiliar with this content, I recommend you go and watch to get a better feel of what I am doing. Thank you, and please enjoy. The college softball tournament is upon us, so how about we break down this bracket? Since, obviously, there is no possible way to cover all 64 teams in depth without making this video longer than Game 1 of the 2017 Champs Series, I'll talk mainly about what the host of each regional has to offer, and talk about other teams in that regional in less depth. Apologies to those if I do not cover your team as thoroughly, but it's not my fault that the bracket was made the way it was. What's this? A future Big 12 member is trying to act like they can replace one of the teams leaving? That's cute. Jokes aside, this UCF team is serious. A respectable 46-12 record can attest to this team's skill, and the teams they have played were no joke. From what I could find, only one of their 12 losses were to teams who didn't make the tourney. But they've given some top teams runs for their money. A one-run loss to Florida, taking 3 games against Virginia Tech, taking 1 of 3 games, and sweeping USF only proves the talent on this roster. They even snatched a win against Texas earlier in the year. In terms of what they do, they're not spectacular in any one category, but they're good in all facets. Their ace and senior Gianna Mancha, apologies if I mispronounced it, has been excellent. A 1.7 ERA is not bad considering who they have faced. Now dealing Keely Rochard only shows that this girl can pitch. The American Conference has had some great softball this year, and UCF is the cream of the crop. They may not have anyone who bats 400, but this team does bat around 297 as a whole, and that's low because of pinch hitters, so let's call it 300 as a team. They are a force to be reckoned with, but they might be getting overlooked because of the monster who likely awaits whoever wins this regional. In terms of their competition, Michigan is the name that will jump out due to name, but South Dakota State looks like a team that could run a potential Cinderella. A team ERA of 1.9 and an average of 6.36 runs per game. Michigan's pitchers are no slouch themselves either, to be fair. This will be an interesting regional, that's for sure. All 4 of these teams are top 60 in ERA. Pitching fans, enjoy yourselves. I apologize if I sound harsh here, but I do not think Missouri deserved this hosting bid. 2 wins over a Bama team that has had no bat support for the last month. Woof. This team is a winner of recency bias. Sweeping Kentucky and Texas A&M, beating Bama twice and Tennessee once will give you such benefits, even if you merely go 36-20 and have losses to teams like UConn, Maryland, Kansas, and got swept by Ole Miss. Though I will point out they did beat Illinois twice back-to-back. This Tiger team can hit a long ball. Kimberly Ward with 17 and Brooke Williams with 14 can attest to this. They may not be a certain other team known for the long ball, but this team has power despite a slightly underwhelming average of .280. A team ERA of 3 doesn't bode too well with Arizona in their regional. But this Mizzou team can score. And I would say holding Tennessee's bats to no runs is quite good for the arms of these Tigers. Illinois and Arizona are both battle-tested teams that can score, however. I could see Arizona coming out of this regional, especially with how good their long balls are. Home run derby in Columbia, anyone? If you want to talk about teams who had a hot start, then Florida is a name that should come to mind. Starting off 16-0 before dropping a game to Southern Miss? Okay. Florida's strength of schedule is up there, but they have had issues beating bigger names like Bama and FSU. Even dropped the series to the Lady Vols. It's worth pointing out they went 0-4 against Arkansas as well. Regardless, this Florida team has a great pitching staff, anchored by Elizabeth Hightower. Florida has a team ERA of 2.41, which isn't bad considering they play in the SEC. Also, their region doesn't have the best of pitching staffs, which should give Florida some help in making it to Supers, likely to play their in-state rival. Florida can score, but unlike other teams, they don't hit long balls. But when you have 5 starters hitting over 330, that is not a big deal. Canisius is the second best team in this regional on paper, but who knows? Georgia Tech has some scoring prowess of their own, and that could make things interesting. I still think Florida's arms should keep them afloat. The 35-15 record isn't doing the Huskies justice here. Their losses are mostly all really good teams, and averaging 6 runs per game proves this team can hit. As does their average of 1.6 home runs per game. As of late, Gabby Plain has been pitching with excellence. Despite that, this team has some concerns with their bats. Bailey Kingler, a Player of the Year nominee, is not a concern with a .433 average, but the bottom of this Huskies batting order is all under 250. They may not seem bad, but when you have a pitching staff as good as Texas in your regional, that bottom of the order will get exploited easily. Also, Gabby Plain may be a great pitcher, but her arm will get tired. And the rest of the Huskies' arms are not Gabby Plain and are all averaging over 2.5 ERA. With Weber State and Texas both in the top 25 of scoring, that is a major problem. Washington's bats will have to be ready to go, otherwise they will not be leaving Seattle. Gabby Plain wants to end her career in OKC, you know. Though unless the Huskies can run World teams quickly, I don't think that will happen. Especially now with the Razorbacks likely waiting in the Supers. This Blue Devils team is criminally underrated, possibly because Duke isn't known for softball, but if this team got more recognition, you would see why they were the 2 seed in the ACC tourney. Duke's offense is a top 3 in the nation undoubtedly, and they have great wins to back it up. A 4-0 shutout over Oklahoma State, a series win over Clemson, and an ungodly 24-2 win over James Madison. 24-2? Holy moly, what the heck is this? Duke is another team that can hit the long ball averaging just over 1.87 per game. A batting average of 3.37 as a team also helps this squad. A hitting staff that is top to bottom one to be feared, even rivaling a certain monster we will talk about later. Don't celebrate yet though, Blue Devils. You got an extremely tough draw on UMBC. A squad with 2 of the best pitchers in the nation in Courtney Coppersmith and Kai Matter. And on the other side of that regional lies Georgia and Liberty. 2 more high-powered offenses that could give Duke trouble should their offense struggle a bit. UMBC could hope to become this year's JMU if batters aren't careful. The only difference is UMBC has 2 arms to rely on should the Retrievers make a deep run. If Duke bats get going, however, UMBC will have to cling on to that 16 seed win to remain relevant. This team would likely be given a much higher seeding had Ashley Rogers not been injured during the season. Their 39-16 record is all the more impressive knowing who they faced and that their ace was out for a fair portion of the season. It's a good tale of how good this team is. Pushing the number 1 seed in this tournament back to the brink back in February, as well as wins over Florida, Missouri, UFC, and sweeping Auburn is all the more proof. A team ERA of 2.91 and batting average of .274 may not sound the most impressive, but this team has a long ball. 5 bats have gone yard at least 10 times. Kike Malloy and Zaida Pooney leading the way with 14 each. Not to mention, this team has excellent pitch vision with an on-base percentage of .401. Their opponent in Campbell, however, has a team ERA of 2. Isabella Smith has pitched extremely well for a freshman. Oregon State, who is also in this regional, has 2 extremely talented pitchers in Mariah Mason and Sarah Hondigis. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Tennessee's long ball might be necessary should this team hope to advance to the Supers, but let's hope Ashley Rogers is healthy. She's so talented, it would be a shame for her not to get this chance. This softball team hasn't even been around that long, and they're already hosting a regional? This isn't even Vegas, so I can't claim they hit the jackpot and make a bad pun. Either way, this Clemson Tigers team is a force to be reckoned with. Early season wins over Tennessee and Washington is more than enough to prove their talent. But how about making it to the ACC championship as the 5 seed? This Clemson team is also consistent, never dropping a series to a team who wasn't ranked in the top 25. Hell, this team didn't lose to a team that didn't make the tournament. This Clemson team, however, does have one key weakness: better opponents. This team went a combined 2-9 against FSU, Duke, and Virginia Tech. Despite that, this team has great pitching at their disposal. Reagan Spencer and Millie Thompson have both proven their pitching ability with a sub-2 ERA. And their ace Valerie Cagle has proven over and over again how scary this Clemson team can truly be. A team ERA of 1.76 is more evidence of this pitching staff's dominance. However, pitching can only do so much, and Clemson's below optimal batting average of .274 and fluctuating starting lineup lead this team a major vulnerability: better pitching staffs. This is why they were dominated by Virginia Tech and Florida State. With all 4 teams having top 50 staffs in ERA, and Auburn, Louisville, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, University of North Carolina Wilmington in this region, Clemson will have a major test on their hands. Luckily for them, they do have home run power in their bats. Aleo Logoleo leads this team with 14 long balls, and their ace Valerie Cagle has 12. Emily Winstead of North Carolina Wilmington, however, will look to keep those bats at bay. Will be an interesting regional for sure. especially with how proficient Louisiana is at scoring in their own right. This team got robbed of hosting a super regional because either Minnesota run-ruled them, the Big Ten isn't as strong, or because SEC bias. We'll get to that later. Northwestern was cruising towards the super until they slipped up late in the season and had to settle for the 9th seed. How did Northwestern get this far? Danielle Williams has been pitching lights out. A 1.51 ERA will result in many victories. A team ERA of 2.51 is suboptimal considering Williams' success, but it will do, especially with Northwestern's offense. Rachel Lewis leads the Big Ten in RBI with 52 and has hit 20 home runs this year. Quite a great year for her. This team also has big wins over Washington, Oregon, and Michigan. However, they do have a loss to Notre Dame, who is in this region. That Notre Dame team could play spoiler in Evansville with great hitting, and Oakland's Sydney Campbell has had a great year on the mound. Not to mention Williams has thrown over 200 innings this year. Her arm will only be able to hold out for so long. Notre Dame would be more than happy to punish a tired arm if she gets pushed too far. Don't rest easy, Wildcats. This Arizona State team has picked the perfect time to get hot, all things considered. Taking the series against both UCLA and Washington is only the first bit of proof of this. And this hot streak has landed them in position to host a super regional should they get out of their own regional. This team is also capable of scoring at a high rate. Averaging nearly 2 home runs per game will do that for nearly any team who plays softball. Sydney Sanders leads this team with 17 bombs, but with 4 bats hitting double-digit bombs this year, it makes them even scarier for opposing pitchers. Speaking of pitchers, Lindsay Lopez has proven her worth this year with an ERA of 1.71. Arizona State may not have the lowest ERA, but when you're averaging over 6 runs per game, that is not that big of an issue. There's one thing that might be worth noting though. San Diego State has a better ERA and LSU is almost as proficient at scoring as the Sun Devils. San Diego State's level of competition isn't high, however, and remember Arizona State took the series over UCLA and beat Duke earlier in the year. This team has faced both great offense and great pitchers. This team has a great chance to make it to OKC if they can keep this up. A quick disclaimer needs to be made here. I'm a fan of a certain other team in Oklahoma and am not the biggest fan of the Cowgirls, so I apologize if I sound condescending. I wasn't really sold on this team in March, but considering they dropped the game to UT Arlington, are you really surprised? Credit to this team for bouncing back though, dropping only 1 game of their next 22 to a feisty Iowa State. Though they did end the regular season on a 5-game losing streak. That losing streak, however, was to the top 2 seeds in this tournament. That can be forgiven, especially with Miranda Ellis being unavailable in the circle. This team doesn't score as much as other teams we've talked about, but 5.3 runs per game is nothing to sneeze at. This team's batting average is only .292 though, and this team doesn't have the long ball power of others in the tournament. 1.17 per game is not bad, but this team's strength is keeping you off the board. Miranda Ellis may be limited to DH, but Kelly Maxwell has pitched lights out as of late. An ERA of 1.3 throughout the season shows how good this team is. And remember, they played 4 games against the best scoring team in the nation, Maxwell pitching 3 of those. Morgan Day has also proven herself worthy of the second pitcher in Ellis's injury. If Miranda is able to return to the circle, Oklahoma State will have a 3-headed pitching monster, backed up by what was the best fielding defense in the nation until they started having fielding problems recently. Oklahoma State's fielding must be on point. You can't hope for strike zones to be tight in the postseason, especially with 2 of the nation's best scoring teams in North Texas and Nebraska in your region. Ironically, all 3 of the teams I've mentioned here have been made fools of by a certain team. Fordham is not that team, but they are in this region and could have a surprise performance with their pitchers if the Cowgirls are not careful. I apologize in advance for the salt and anger I'm about to unleash. Those of you who know softball might be expecting me to go off on Montana Fouts. No, I'm not. Let's start by praising Fouts' efforts for this Crimson Tide. An ERA of 1.93 may seem low for who she is, but that's impressive considering how much she's had to pitch as of late. This month's pitching is the result of an injury to Lexi Kelfoyle, another great pitcher on the Tide staff. So why am I about to unleash salt and anger upon the Tide? Because Fouts has gotten 0 bat support as of late, losing 5 of the last 8, including a run rule loss to Texas A&M. What the hell? Allie Shipman isn't to blame here. She's been hitting well, but this team barely bats over 290, and this team has no one who can hit a long ball. Here's why it makes me mad. On May 6th, Montana bounced through a 14 strikeout game against Missouri and gave up 2 runs, both of them on the first inning home run. Remember, Missouri's a good home run hitting team. How did Alabama respond to the gem bounce through? 5 hits and 2 runs in 8 innings. And they lost when Fouts gave up a walk with bases loaded because their arm was exhausted. This Alabama team needs to wake their bats up. Fouts and Kilfoyle can't score any runs. Murray State's got a top 5 ERA as a team at 1.53. Hannah James and Jenna Vapor have sub 1.5 ERA, and Bama's bats asleep could provide a challenge. Stanford's 2.04 ERA shouldn't be slept on either. This is a warning, Bama. Wake up, or you're not leaving Tuscaloosa. If you know college softball, you know the UCLA Bruins. They are a great team once again. They swept Washington if you need proof. The last few years, Rachel Garcia was the name on this UCLA squad. She may be gone now, but this UCLA team still has excellent pitching. Their 1.5 ERA as a team would prove this. Lauren Shaw's ERA is an unreal .94. Holly Azevedo, 1.22. Megan Farimo, 1.79. The pitching on this squad is unreal. This team can score as well as they average 6.2 runs per game. Your team batting .317 as a whole will do that. This team may lack long balls, but 4 batters over .350 batting will offset that quite easily. UCLA is a force to be reckoned with. But Loyola Marymount has great pitchers themselves, and Grand Canyon is hitting very well this year. Ole Miss is battle tested as well. UCLA should be able to get out of this region, but do not get lazy, Bruins. An emergency bulletin has been issued. Those in the Fayetteville area should be on the lookout for softball-sized projectiles should they be outside at any point. The reason is this Razorback squad, a team averaging nearly 2 home runs per game and just over 7.3 runs per game. A .337 batting average doesn't hurt either. This team hasn't lost a series all year long, unless you count 2 losses to Washington, but that wasn't a series. This team has dropped few games they shouldn't have. But if they're on point, they're a very difficult team to stop. Lenny Malkin, Henny Gamble, and Daniel Gibson all have at least 18 home runs this year. This team hits bombs. This team may not have the best pitching with an ERA of 2.81, and their ace in Chenny Stills has an ERA of 2.19, but could that really be that big of an issue with this offense? Actually, it could. Oregon is in this region, and they average almost 6 runs per game. And that Oregon team plays in the Pac-12 against pitchers like Plain and Shaw. 1.29 home runs per game isn't bad when you face those pitchers. And I haven't even mentioned the best offense in this region, Wichita State. This team rivals the number 1 seed in every offensive category, and Addison Barnard leads the nation in home runs with 32. Only 3 away from the record set last year. Cindy McKinney leads the nation in batting average as well, though it should be noted the Shockers tend to struggle against teams with amazing pitching staffs. Arkansas should be able to at least outscore the Shockers due to having faced better competition, but don't be shocked to see Wichita State make a run. These bad puns are really going to get to me, aren't they? There's a part of me that doesn't get why this team is the 3 seed. I thought they would be the 2 seed, but this team is still feared by everyone. Let's start with their pitching staff. A team ERA of 1.93 helps any team do anything. But let me introduce you to a name you need to know. Keely Rochard. One of the best pitchers in the ACC, Rochard has shut down some of the best bats in the nation. And Emma Lemley has proven to be a solid number 2 as long as she isn't getting called for illegal pitches. A sweep of Clemson, beating FSU twice, and only 7 losses is something to be proud of. A top 20 batting average also helps any team when your pitching staff is as lethal as Tech's. The Hokies may not have a long ball, but Reed Peck has hit 11 this year. Not bad. Tech's offense will need to be on point, however. Kentucky and Miami, Ohio, are in this region. Both teams have massive long ball power and are top 15 scoring offenses in the nation. Miami is led by Carly Spade with 27 home runs, second in the nation behind Barnard. And Kentucky is led by Aaron Koffel with 17. St. Francis also has great ERA themselves. Tech has beaten 2 of these teams, however, and they should be able to do it. especially if Rochard and Lemley are both on point. Also, this team put up 23 runs against Florida State in a single game. Speaking of Florida State, here they are, the number 2 seed. This team was white hot at the start of the year, losing only 2 of their first 38 games. And then they lost the series to Virginia Tech. One of these games being an embarrassment of a 23-9 loss. But let's talk FSU's pitching. Catherine Sandercock is back and she's proving why she was one of the best pitchers in the nation last year. A 1.41 ERA will do that. Daniel Watson has also proven her value with a 2.35 ERA, so Florida State has pitching. That's cool and all, but can they score? 6.04 runs per game says yes. Michaela Eddingfield has been lighting the ACC up with 16 bombs. She's only a freshman, and look at this bomb she hit versus UCLA. Kaylee Harding isn't far behind with 15 herself. Also, Florida State is solid when fielding, boasting the best fielding percentage in the nation. These bats must come alive for FSU to win this region, however. Georgina Corrick of USF wants to become this year's Odyssey Alexander, and she has an ERA of .51 to prove her skill. That's in the American as well, so she's no joke. She leads the nation with 36 wins as well, but here's a concern. USF is 8-9 without her. Corrick's arm will get tired if she's overpitched. USF's team ERA is 1.62, which is concerning if Corrick's ERA is .51 with over 265 innings pitched. Assuming I did my math right, that means when Corrick isn't pitching, USF averages nearly 4 runs allowed per game. USF doesn't make up for it in offense either. Watch out, Bulls. Mississippi State on Howard, on the other hand, thank you for coming, but it likely will not be pretty for you. Prairie View A&M, congrats on making the NCAA tournament. You're scheduled for the electric chair. The Oklahoma Sooners are the nation's best team by far with an unheard of 49-2 record. This team started out 37-0 before losing to Texas on the day they retired Cat Osterman's number. But they beat Texas twice before that and one of them in a run rule. They won their next 11 before once again losing to Oklahoma State in a game that had a very questionable strike zone, even according to Oklahoma State fans. This team has 34 run rules and is the nation's best offense, averaging nearly 9 runs per game. Batting average? Number 1 in the nation. Home runs per game? Number 1 in the nation. Home runs in general? Number 1 in the nation. On base percentage? Number 1 in the nation. Slugging percentage? Number 1 of this nation. I'm a fan of this team, but let me cover the cliff notes of this team's offense. Tiare Jennings has 22 home runs. Grace Lyons 18. Lindsey Elam 14, Alyssa Brito 13, and Jana Johns 10. And finally, after walking her way here from Hawaii, here is softball's home run queen Jocelyn Allo. Her stats may only show 25 home runs this year, but she would have way more if teams didn't walk her for 8 straight games. Let's talk walks as well. I can't find the stat, but I'd assume Oklahoma leads the nation in walks drawn per game, as Allo and Coleman both rank in the top 10. And also, don't think Oklahoma just hits home runs. Allo averaged 4.481, Lyons 415, Coleman 405, and Taylor Snow 386. What was that? You think this team is all offense and want to know their pitching numbers? They've given up 45 runs all year long. Nicole May is 9th in the nation with an ERA of 1.11. And guess what? She's the 3rd pitcher in Oklahoma's rotation. And number 2, you have Hope Troutwine, the North Texas transfer who has become a monster this year. At present, she's number 2 in the nation with an ERA of .31. But not long ago, her ERA was only .09. No joke. Troutwine is also 2nd in the nation in hits allowed per 7 at only 2.76. And now for the cream of the crop. Jordy Ball. The freshman sensation who originally committed to Nebraska was pulled to Norman by Patty Gasso and has taken the nation by storm. She was the unanimous Big 12 Freshman of the Year and should win NFCA Freshman of the Year as well. Hell, she's a finalist for USA Softball Player of the Year, period. Or at least she was a top 10 finalist before the top 3 were released in the process of writing this video. Her ERA is .95, and she has been a world beater for the Sooners all year long. In the 4th game of the year, Ball pitched a 14 strikeout win against UCLA. Hell, she's thrown a perfect game. Did I mention Oklahoma has thrown a combined 29 shutouts? And Oklahoma's field is another issue. Jana Johns is a spectacular defensive third baseman who should have been all Big 12 but wasn't, probably because they already had enough Sooners in there. But who won Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year? None other than Grace Lyons. I would show you a play from the Big 12 title, but the play would likely get me hit by ESPN. All you need to know is it got the attention of Patrick Mahomes. And anything hit to center field is food for Jada Coleman. Minnesota and Texas A&M should not be taken lightly, however. Both teams have upset potential should they catch OU slipping. But good luck with this team.